share my screen. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Sounds good. All right, let's begin. Guys, so today, let's start off. My name is Haider Khan, and I'm a career service professional at the Career Center. And today, I'm going to be talking to you guys about acing your interview. Now, from this workshop, we're going to learn about some different types of interviews that you're likely to encounter during your professional job search, some tips on how to prepare for these interviews and what exactly you should be doing during these interviews and even after these interviews. And we're also going to be talking about how to answer some interview questions that may pop up. So, a purpose of a job interview is basically twofold. The first one is for the employer to get to know you a little bit better and just see what your professional resume, professional experience looks like and what you can bring to this organization that you're applying to. And the second part of the job interview is for you to actually get to know this organization more and like ask some questions at the interview and see like, hey, is this like a place where I can see myself working and see myself growing professionally? So it's really important for you to like gain as much of knowledge as you can during these interviews because it helps you ascertain like if this career or job is something that I want to do, or maybe I should just move on and try to look for some other jobs that I want to apply to. Now the interview is structured in basically three formats. The first one is just the introduction. And the introduction is where you just build rapport with the person that's interviewing you. And that can be something simple as like, hey, you know, when you sit down at their office or whatever, you see that they have like a Cubs mug on their desk and saying, hey, are you a Cubs fan? It can be something simple as that. And the second is the information exchange. And that's like, you know, the meat or the bulk of the interview. And that's where like everything happens. You know, this is where they ask you questions and they learn, are you going to be a fit for this company that you're applying to? And this is where also you guys kind of like get more into your resume and talk about your past experiences and learn more about your skill set and what you can bring to this organization that you're applying to. And the last part is for you to get to know more about the company you're applying to. And these are just like closing and following up questions. So, you know, at the end of any interview that you're going through, number one question that's going to be asked was like, hey, do you have any questions for me? And this is your chance to like ask them questions and learn more about the position you're applying to. If you have any questions that came up in your research, or just learn more about the company structure and organization. This also includes a thank you email that you send to the interviewer saying, hey, you know, like, thank you for your time and thank you for taking the time out of your day to interview me for this position. I hope to hear from you in the future. Now, usually in thank you emails are sent out like 24 hours after your interview is done, 48 hours after your interview is done. But since everything is like digital now, instead of 48 hours, we do recommend sending a thank you email out within 24 hours. So let's talk about the different types of interview. The first interview that you're going to be going through is like a group interview. And this is like the first round of interviews usually. And a group interview is something that I went through personally too when I applied to the Career Center. So I know in my experiences, like the group interview that they had was, you know, they divided us up into like groups of 4. Then they gave us a situation with like different bunch of words. And we had to like come up with a storyline that followed the words that they gave us for that particular situation. And group interview is basically a first round interview, and it's used to like filter out the people who don't meet like the basic requirements for the position that you guys are applying to. Now, the second interview or your second round of interviews is the face-to-face interview. Now, this is where the person that you're applying to learns more about you specifically. So this is after you pass the first round of group interviews, and now you're at face-to-face interviews. This is for you and the person that is interviewing you to get to know each other more personally to see if you're a correct fit for this company. Now, some interviews that are getting more popular nowadays because of Corona and everything are virtual and pre-recorded interview and phone interviews. Now, virtual and pre-recorded interviews can be broken up into like 2 different categories, I would say. Like the first type of interview can be through something such as Zoom or Skype, you know, where just like where you go into your classroom. Let's say, for example, when you go into your classroom, then you just hear your teacher talk and stuff like that. This is the same with your interview now. So you're going to be going to a Zoom room, and like the interviewer will ask you some questions and stuff like that, and you just answer in response. Now, this is mainly like a face-to-face interview type situation, but just online. And now another type of interview or virtual interview that's becoming more popular are pre-recorded or one-way interviews. And these interviews are kind of unique, and they started like getting more traction like last year, but with Corona and everything being online, they are starting to become more popular now. And you can think of this as like a proctorial type interview, let's say. So you know how you want when you take your test or exams for proctorial, like they lock your screen and you can only see the test on your screen and that's it. Now this is the same thing with pre-recorded or one-way interviews. Like they'll give you a login and your password and stuff like that. You log into a website that they assign you, and once you log in, the webcam turns on and a bunch of questions pop up on the screen, and you just go through each question and answer them one by one and record yourself. And then after you're done, just press like send record and stuff like that. And the phone interview is the same thing, kind of virtual interview or a face-to-face interview, but it's just done by the phone. And one thing you want to make sure with all these interviews is like make sure you guys are in a professional setting. So like say if you're in a coffee shop, you don't want people in your background like talking loudly and messing with your interview. So always just make sure you're in a professional setting. Your laptop and computer are like sufficiently charged, or even if you're using your cell phone, make sure your phone is sufficiently charged and you have like a reliable internet connection or a cell phone service. All right, now let's talk about preparing for an interview, guys. So when preparing for an interview, you should always do one thing, know your professional etiquette. So that's the same as, dress up professionally, make sure you have professional interactions when you meet with the employer, such as, like shaking their hands and go like, hey, my name is Hyder, for my example, my name is Hyder. The thing is, the second one is always dress for success. You always want to dress for the job that you want. So that means showing up in a professional attire such as a suit, a tie, and depending on girls and men, your specific attire. And when you always have a question about attire, about what you should wear for your interview, always make sure to err on the side of caution or conservative. Another thing you want to do is you want to highlight your transferable skills. And when we talk about transferable skills, we're going to go a little bit more into that in the next few slides. And some of these skills that I talk about are things that you really want to highlight on your interview or on your resume, because like this is something that employers are looking for in college graduates. Another thing you want to do, sorry, the Zoom is blocking my screen. Another thing you want to do is you want to research the company that you're applying to. And when you research the company that you're applying to, that means like, just like going on their website and reading their mission statement and learning about some of the products or designs that may be putting out, and trying to come up with some type of questions that you can ask the interviewer at the end of your interview. And you want these questions to be something more than basic questions that can just be answered by like looking at some page on the website. This is the question that you want to ask to get more insight on the company that may not necessarily be available online. Oh, there you go. And another thing, you want to practice your answers. And when you practice your answers, this will just help you out because, like say like you're nervous or you may be like stuttering or speaking fast. When you practice your answers, you become more comfortable with what you're going to say, and it can help you out in your interview because it can keep you calm and show a calm demeanor. And one way you can practice your answers too, guys, is one thing I really like, one resource that I really like about the Career Center is we have like virtual or mock interviews. So with these mock interviews is basically you get connected with another career service professional at the Career Center, and you give them the job description of whatever position you're applying to. Then after 48 hours, they'll formulate some questions that you can most likely encounter during your interview. And you'll stage like a virtual interview. So they'll ask you questions, you'll dress in professional attire, and then you'll just go through and give your answers to the question that they ask. And at the end, you guys go through the video and say like, hey, maybe you could have done better in this section by speaking more slowly or speaking more clearly. Let's talk about interview etiquette. So with interviewing etiquette, the most important thing is, you want to arrive on time. You don't want to arrive late during the interview to a position that you're applying to, because they might think, hey, if you're applying late for an interview, what makes us think they're going to show up to job on time, Another thing you want to do is you want to introduce yourself professionally to everyone that you meet. So that can just be as, like I said before, just shaking their hand and like telling them your name. And you always want to bring multiple copies of your resume or reference list in a professional portfolio, not like a folder or something that you may use for classes, but professional portfolio. And you want to bring multiple copies of each document because say if you're being interviewed by multiple people, you want to give each of them a copy. You don't want to just have one copy and say, hey, can you please like pass it around with everyone that's there, And you also want to build rapport with the interviewer, and that can just be something simple as I said before. Just like noticing their favorite sports team that's from a mug that's on their desk or something like that. And you always want to have a strong demeanor when you're going through your interview. So that means strong eye contact, smile, strong posture, and avoid fidgeting. Because if you do all these things, it kind of gives off a sense of nervousness and uncertainty about the questions that you're answering. But if you have a strong demeanor, then they can see you have confidence in yourself, and then that'll make them have confidence in you too. And you want to use appropriate hand gestures, because appropriate hand gestures help like clarify a point that you want to hit on, or it helps signify a point that you want to hit on too. And you always make sure you want to relax and be yourself, because this will help you get through the interview rather than being nervous. And these are just some tips about dressing for success during an interview. So in some common themes throughout everyone is, you want to have button-down blazers or solid and dark neutral colors. And you don't want bright colors either, because the bright colors might distract the interviewer from paying attention to your words, but paying attention to the clothes you're wearing because they're bright. And you always want to have good personal hygiene too. So that just means like hair and facial hair is good, your makeup and nails are good, and your fragrance is good too. So you're smelling good, and you're not like giving off a bad personal smell. And always one important thing to make sure is personal items and cell phones are silent during your interviews, because you don't want them going off and distracting you during your interview and kind of messing with your answers. So when I talked about transferable skills in the past, these are the transferable skills that I was hitting on. Communication, problem solving, teamwork, initiative, analytical, strong work ethic, leadership, and communication skills. And all these skills came from the National Association of College and Employers, or NACE. So what NACE did was they basically went around to a bunch of different companies and asked like the one question, like, hey, what are you looking for in recent college graduates? And these are the skills that popped up most. So you always want to hit on these skills in your interview, and we'll be going a little bit more into depth about each of these skills too. Oh, I missed the slide. So let's talk about them here. So, communication skills, that can be just something as, like, hey, like, are you an effective communicator, both verbally and like written form too? And this is becoming more important in written form too, because since everyone's working remotely. So when I talk about written form, that's something such as like when you write emails or memos, are they good? Are they clear? Or are they filled with grammar and spelling mistakes? Another one is problem solving skills. Now, problem solving skills is, hey, like, are you able to solve a problem that they give to you? Or do they have to like hold your hand through each process and help you out with every small minor detail? Or are you able to figure it out on their own? And another one is teamwork. And that's just straightforward, like, are you able to work well in the team? Another skill is initiative. Now with initiative, that means like, are you doing things on your own, or do you have to be like keep reminded to do your task? So with initiative is like, are you tackling everything head on, or are you not really giving it your best effort? Now, analytical and quantitative skills are kind of like using technology that you have at hand too. So are you able to analyze and use quantitative skills to complete a task that they have give you, or use like any programs that you might need to accomplish that task? So for example, if you're a business student, like, are you able to use like Microsoft Excel sheets effectively and analyze and quantify that data that they have given you? Another one is strong work ethic. Now, strong work ethic, that just means like, are you coming into work on time? Are you getting your job done? Or are you slacking off and leaving early? Another skill is leadership skills. Now, leadership skills, that basically means like, if you're in a group and working towards a common goal and you're the leader of the group, are you gonna like snip at everyone and demean everyone in your group, or are you gonna help to like divide up the work divide up the work to each person that maybe has a strong skill set in that specific area that you're dividing up the work to? And are you guys able to effectively work together and complete the goal that you have at hand? And our last skill, just communication skills, kind of building off the first one of written. This one is just verbal. So when you talk with other people, are you clearly pronouncing your words, and are you clearly getting your message across, or are they getting confused by what you're saying? Now, when you research the company, these are some like details that you want to research. So they can be something such as size of the organization, location, their mission goals, business, or like current projects or events that they're putting on. You also want to explore the company's social media too, because everyone's using social media nowadays, and even professional companies are using this to like help get the message of their company across. So even with social media, like you can see like some things that they're working on and some new common goals that they're working to. You also want to leverage your connections. When I mean leverage your connections when you're researching the company, is that something such as like talking with your professors or your academic advisor and asking like, hey, like you've had students like in my major, in my position, and like, and I'm pretty sure students that apply to this company. Like, can you tell me more about this company and what they're working with? And one thing you also always want to try to do is like know the person who's interviewing you. Now that may not be possible with every case, but if you're like in email contact with them before the interview and like who's interviewing you, then maybe just do a quick Google search on them or search up their LinkedIn and see like, hey, how long have they been at this company? What does some of their role entail at this company? That way you get to know more about the person who's interviewing you. And make sure to practice your answers too. Now, when you get asked questions during an interview, they can fall into some different categories. Now, some are on this page, and some are on this slide, and some others are on the next slide. But but one category of question that you can encounter are situational questions. So that's just such as they give and are you able to solve a problem. So, for example, like how would you handle a situation if you met a resistance when introducing a new idea? So, like how are you able to work well with each other? Another situation that you might example is self-awareness. So this is where they learn a little bit more about you and explore your skills, preferences, and goals. So, that can be something such as simple as the number one question that you're most likely going to be asked in an interview: why do you want to work for us? So, this is just talking about your skills and why you believe like your skills can benefit this organization when they ask, why do you want to work for us? Another question that they might ask you is a cultural fit type of question. And with the cultural fit type of question, this is just saying like, hey, how might you fit with the employee that you're working with? And this can be like a broad range of questions too that fall under like this type of formatting. Like, if you were a blank, what would you be? Like, I know during one of my interviews in the past, I was asked like, if you were a house, what part of the house would you be? So there are really broad range of questions that they might ask you with cultural fit to determine like if you're going to work well with the other employees here at this company. And another type of question you might answer is behavioral questions. Now, behavioral questions are used to like learn about your past and learn about your past work experiences, and what exactly you did at those experiences. Now, they can, kind of get an idea of what you did from your resume, but they use behavioral type of questions to get a little bit more into depth and talk a little bit more about your role in these past organizations. The next one can be testing or skills case. Now, this type of question is different for like every position that you're applying to. So like if you're applying for a sales position, it can be such as sell me this pen. Or I know like for engineers, for like computer science engineers, for example, they'll be given like a real world problem that they have to solve through coding in front of their interviewer. So it can always be different to like the position you're applying to, and it's more related to that. And one thing you want to do when you answer your questions is always utilize the STAR method when you answer these questions. And we're going to be talking about the STAR method in the next few slides. Now, the STAR method is made up of, like 4 different types of categories. So the situation, task, action, result, and they make up your STAR method. And we're going to be going a little bit more into depth about each of these results in the next few slides. So when you talk about the STAR method basically helps you go more into detail about the question that about your answer for an interview question. So for example, it's a sample interview question, tell us about a time you led a team to success. Without the STAR method, it can be something simple as, I will lead a team to success by ensuring everyone has a voice in achieving product outcomes. But with STAR method, like even if I didn't like read this out to you right now, like you can see like how much more in depth this question is and how much more detail they're including in this method with the STAR method compared to without the STAR method. So like if you look at the broad like highlights of this question, they answer as a current project manager at UIUC, I helped increase recycling rates. And by increasing recycling rates, they didn't just say like I increased recycling rates and moved on. They talked about like how exactly they helped increase recycling rates. Like I helped them achieve recycling rates by creating table events and posters on the importance of recycling that were placed around dining halls. That's just one example that they give. Then they also gave another example, moving recycling bins next to trash bins to make it easier to students who want to recycle different items. And one important thing that they really did with the STAR method is that they quantified the session by including 3%. So like you can always say like, hey, I helped increase recycling rates, but they don't know the scale of what you increase your recycling rates by. But when you say, I helped increase it by 3%, they can apply a number to like the amount of recycling rates that increased thanks to your initiative and what exactly you did. So you always want to utilize the STAR method, such as situation, task, action, result, and use that method to help expand on your answers and not just give like the basic answers, but give them more in-depth answers so that they can see like, hey, you had a bigger role in this organization than that you previously led on. Now, when you prepare for an interview, there's always like a different types of interviews. We talked about, such as group, face-to-face, virtual, pre-recorded, and phone. And when you prepare for these interviews, you always want to do this. You always want to interpret the question that the employer is asking you. So that's when I, talk about those questions past, such as behavioral, skill, or cultural fit questions. So you always want to know those types of questions and kind of like gauge like, hey, by asking me this type of question, they're trying to get this type of response for me. And you always want to remember that the employer is looking to gain specific information from your knowledge, and that type of knowledge is like those 8 skills that I talked about in the past. Communication, verbal, teamwork skills. So always remember, like when they ask you a question, they're not just asking you a question; they're looking to gain something specific from your answer from that question. And you always want to avoid generalities and opinions, and mostly opinions too, because if you state an opinion, it may not be necessarily an opinion that the interviewer agrees with, and that may cause friction during your interview. And always remember, like students always say, like they stay away from negative results in their interview, but negative results aren't necessarily a bad thing that you can talk for an interview with your interview, because with negative results you can also help explain like, hey, like, yeah, we didn't achieve like the goal that we wanted to achieve with this result, but this is what I learned from this experience, and now in the future I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to change that experience to get a more positive result. And you always want to bring your skills and experience to the forefront and explain what you bring to the table, because when you're interviewing for a position, they're seeing, what can you bring to this company? And by talking about your skills and experiences, you can help display like, hey, like you're looking for a position who can do this, this, and this. And with these skills and with these past experiences, I can do that job for you really well. So always try to display those skills and make sure the employer sees that, hey, you're not just another person who's interviewing for the job, but you're a highly qualified candidate for this position that you're applying to. And always the biggest part of your interview is like, at the end when they ask you like, hey, do you have any questions for us? And we always recommend preparing 2 to 4 questions to ask the interview at the end of the interview, because you don't just want to say like, no, I'm good, I don't have any questions for you. Because if you ask them questions, like they get to see like, hey, you're actually interested in this position, you're interested enough to have questions to ask me to learn more about this position. Now, it doesn't have to be such as like, more really complex questions, but it can be something simple as, what are the next steps in your company's interviewing process, or like, what is the biggest challenging facing the person you hire for this position? And you always want to come with question in hand, just so, you have something to ask at the end. But just because you have those questions in hand doesn't mean like you can't ask another question or another topic of concern that that might pop up in your head during an interview. These questions you should just prepare just so you have something to ask at the end. And remember, you want these types of questions to be something that you can't just like answer necessarily by researching the company or looking at the company's website. You want them to be a little bit more into depth about what exactly happens at this company. And following up and next steps after your interview. So the following up steps are really important too, because this is where you send your thank you email. So the thank you email, you want to make sure to be prompt, professional, specific, and concise. And by prompt, that means, send the thank you email within 24 hours of your interview. Now, in the past, we did say like 48 hours and you're fine. But now, since everything is virtual and online, make sure it's 24 hours. And you always want to be professional too. You want to maintain the professional tone that was set in your interview. So, when you had that professional tone, just keep it concise and keep it professional throughout your email too, because you don't want to be, because you're not like friends yet, like you have like a professional working experience with these individuals. And you always want to be specific too, and concise kind of plays into that too. And by specific, try to highlight some parts of your interview and try to say like, hey, I really enjoyed like this question that you asked me, or I really enjoyed learning more about the company that I'm applying to at the end when you ask some questions. And be concise too. You want to be short and sweet and right to the point. You don't want to write a big email for them that they have to read through, because with everything being online nowadays, they are more than likely going to have like a lot of more emails that they have to read through. So you just want to be concise so they can get through this email fast and still remember you. And you can always check out sample emails or any other documents on our website too by searching up sample emails at Career Center at UIUC. And make sure to practice your interviewing too. And like I said, like mock interviews is something that I really recommend. Like they're really beneficial. Like this is one of my favorite services that we offer at the Career Center. So each student gets 2 a semester because we just want to be able to get through every student that requests one. And these are really amazing because like I said, like they'll tailor questions to like the position that you're applying to. And then when you interview with the position that's interviewing from the Career Center, it's recorded too. So like you can always like go through it and like go through the material that you had and just see like, hey, maybe I messed up in this section and try to like explain yourself better in that section. So mock interviews are a really amazing service that the Career Center offers, and I highly recommend them. And does anyone have any questions for me from this presentation?
Thank you for the presentation. Right. My question is more likely related to kind of just general question about interview. Like, I wanted to know, like, if you make it to like a final round of interview, do you think like what's the probability that you can have a job if you made it like to the final round? Thank you.
Are you saying like some problems that may arise in your final rounds of interview?
Yeah, like you made the first round, you made the second round, and then on the